Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us on this lovely Thursday afternoon. This is Shaper Sessions. I am Jake, and today we are going to be doing a fun one. We're doing a project build, but not just any project. We're going to be applying the different types of joinery that I've gone over the past month on our Instagram live stories. We're going to be taking all those different joints and we're going to be applying them to one project. So if you're not watching us on Instagram live, you have a little bit of taste, we're going to be taking look into what we've been doing on there, but I also encourage you to do it because it's a weekly thing that I do every Tuesday at noon on IG Live, and today's gonna be fun. It's a small project, but I think it's a really interesting one. It's a wine rack. So I have a little sketch of it here if you want to go on the overhead, and the whole point of it was to apply these different types of joinery. So let's go over them. We have the rabbet joint. Now we're going to be doing a dowel reinforced rabbet joint here, but I have that in two locations, down here and on this back panel here. Then we also are doing, well, essentially a double blind dado shelf, but I'm turning that into a double blind mortise and tenon of sorts, but it's essentially using the radius that the cutter leaves over an origin, just leaving that's an 1/8 inch radius, and using a round over bit and a trim router to get that profile, and they just seat into each other beautifully. And then finally, we have two sliding dovetail shelves right there. So those dovetails are going to slide all the way through to the back, add a little decorative detail and a lot of structure. And then for the dowel reinforcement at the end, we're going to glue it up, and we'll add those dowels in later. It's going to be a fun, kind of a decorative thing too. Personally, I think I'll be working in Doug fir today. I'm going to do some maple dowel, so I think that's going to look really nice on the side profile. So you can see it's kind of small. It's only for 3 bottles of wine, but let's say it's for your 3 best bottles of wine. You want to keep it out, and of course at least 4 glasses. Let's get right into it. I am using this little dovetail bit. It is a smaller one because I'm working with material that is about 0.64 inches thick. Ted will go ahead and drop the link to this. This is the Freud 3/8 9-degree dovetail bit with, of course, a 1/4 inch shank. And you can go to a larger dovetail bit, but again, I'm working with relatively thin material, so I'm keeping it small. All right. So I have all my panels laid out here, and I've gone ahead and cut at least one, and I've cut the wine shelf as well. So we're going to cut the mating part, do some test fits. All of this was either done on workstation, so all of these were done directly on the shelf because it's a perfect size for it, or on this custom fixture that I made, which is basically a piece of MDF and a piece of plywood and another piece of plywood on top, just to achieve that same height. So I'm shooting for the exact same thickness of my material, 1 for proper tape reading, and 2 so that origin can slide back and forth nice and easily. Okay, so I got all my parts labeled. I'm going to grab my top shelf that I have not cut my dovetails on. We're going to move over to our workstation. All right. As always, a workstation, I'm going to have to adjust this camera here real quick. All right. And I am pressing up against the registration pins and up against the support bar. Using 2 different types of clamps here. I love that you can actually just, depending on the project, whatever works best, you can use that particular type of clamp. This is the stock clamp that comes with workstation. And then we have the sliding F-style clamp as well. All right, looks good. Always give it a visual check. And that all looks fine and dandy up top. All right, Now for this, I'm actually not going to be rocking a spoil board because I want to get around the back, and I'm not too worried about tear out in this particular instance. But what I did do is I put the engraving bit into my spindle upside down, finger tight, so it just leaves that solid shank exposed. So that's giving me a really good probe because I want to make sure that these dovetails fall exactly on my situation. Give me one moment while I sign in. Now all my files are directly on my shaper hub, so I'll be able to pull them from the shaper hub to my workspace, and we're going to start with a new scan. Overlapping those scan lines and making sure I get a nice clean image of my material down there at the bottom. Alright, there it is. Let's make a grid. So I'm lowering that probe just below the surface of my material, just enough so I can make contact with the edge. Boom. Boom. And around to the left side. Boom. There we go. I'm going to go ahead and throw in that dovetail bit. And I also want to make sure that I get a really good Z-touch because depth is very crucial when using a dovetail bit. Now we did a whole sessions on dovetails, but I'll go over it again. These are tricky because they undercut essentially. So when you commit to a cut, you really got to commit. There's no retracting halfway through because of course it will ruin that cut line. So we are going to be very cautious while making these cuts and do it in one depth pass. And again, it's good because our depth, I don't feel the need to take out material beforehand with a 1/4 inch bit. I've done some tests, I know it works well, but if I was doing a larger dovetail, I would use that 1/4 inch straight bit to at least hog out some of the material in the way to make it a little easier for the dovetail bit to go through. Alright, and make sure that's nice and lined up. The other thing that I'm doing is I am using the diameter of my dovetail bit. I actually found to be 0.27 at the spot where I'm going to be using it. So I'm not using the full depth of the bit, and I just used a pair of calipers, and I know, okay, that's how deep I'm going, so that dimension there is the final dimension of my bit. Now I'm using the top dimension so that when I cut to 0, I know that that top edge is at 0 offset, and that's what I'm working off of. So 0.27, Z-touch, hands off the tool, but keep your eyes on it and make sure it gets a nice solid contact. Beautiful. And let's bring in our file. The wine rack and the dovetail. I want to grab that bottom left anchor. And you can see I gave myself a little note there too. Place at -0.5. That's because I want to be able to enter and exit my cut path totally off of my material, so I don't risk damaging it. So place that there. That was at x equals -0.5, y equals 0. Right there. Okay. So this is what I was talking about. I'm going to plunge way out here in the open air so that I can introduce the cutter and come all the way across. Alrighty. Dial in my depth. My material is 0.625 or 0.65, so I'm going to do 0.325 on the depth. Give myself, we'll do this in 2 passes. And we're good to go. That looks beautiful. Safety glasses on. Here we go. Voila. I love cutting Douglas fir because you can really hear each striation of the soft and hard grain pattern. Kind of sings to you. So that's our first side done. And we're going to flip. Just so you have a better look at that, I'll bring it down here. All the way across. All right. Now let us back into workstation. We're going to do the opposing side. I am keeping my probe face that I'm same face that was against workstation's clamping face. That is what I'm repeating. You know, it depends on what kind of joint you're doing. In a box joint, you would typically use the aligning edge, this edge, and keep that consistent. But for this particular one, I'm using the repetitive face. Alright, looks good. And again, because depth is just so crucial, I like to be extra sure, extra pedantic. And Z-touch again. Always good practice. You want to set your tool up so that you know exactly where 0 is. And I'm going to erase my cut history. Same thing, we're going to do it in 2 passes, a little bit of an offset, and then 1 more pass to finish it up. right. Beautiful and repeatable. We now have our shelf, our top shelf, with 2 dovetails running down either side. Just show that off down here. Cool. Let's set this aside. And this. And let's focus on the right side of the cabinet. See, I've already cut the left. It's got all the details in there, but we're going to go over how to dial each one of those in. So, again, general rule of thumb. Whenever you're doing something that fits into another thing, cut that thing first. Because you want to be able to test fit on, so you're cutting tenons, cut your tenons first so you can move to your mortise and dial in that fit using your negative offsets or positive offsets and really get that fit to be exactly where you want it. And that's what I'm going to be doing with these. You will also notice that I have rounded these edges off with an 1/8 inch trim router bit. And that's going to do that blind dado of sorts that we're talking about. Okay. Put some double-sided tape on this. Where do I want this side? I think. All right. I'm just looking at, I have gorgeous Doug fir that has a little bit of lighter sapwood in the front. And I want to keep all that kind of at the front of the cabinet. So I try to be as consistent as possible across all the pieces, just so it's like a bit of a sunset coming forward. All right. Double-sided tape. Put that here, and then we flip that here. Yeah, that's going to give me what I want. And if you're wondering to yourself, man, that looks like some nice double-sided tape, you're right, it is. And you can buy it at our store. We liked it so much that we started selling it. And it is just the perfect level of stickiness, incredible shear strength, but still possible to get off your workpiece after it's all said and done. All right. And again, as we go through this, if any questions come up, please go ahead and put them in the chat. Ample pressure. Great. Now, I'm working in a pretty tight space here, so I want to make sure that I have room to move my origin around. And a little closer than I'd like. So I'm going to scoot this over briefly. So we don't run into anything. What's nice about this project too is it is entirely, well, really done on the inside. So instead of having, we could do a flip cut, but really all of our joinery is done on the inside of the cabinet. And any decorative elements, we could do a flip cut and do on the outside if we didn't want them to be through decorative elements. I went back and forth on what I wanted to add to this piece as far as like a decorative element to the outside, and I ended up keeping it more clean, and I'm happy with that. But if you, for example, wanted to do an engraving on this side panel or anything, really, it is a big playground. I gave it handles. All right. Thank you for bearing with me. Let's go ahead and scan in our new workspace. Overlapping those rows. And getting a nice clean image of bottom. Well, you know, since we already have, well, that's not true. I am going to put in the 1/4 inch bit, or the engraving bit, so that I can get a good grid off of this. And we're still going to be using this dovetail bit for the negative. It all starts with a very solid grid. Best rule of thumb, use that engraving cutter in there backwards, finger tight, hand tight, back into the tool, but make sure you tighten the spindle carriage. So now we're using that solid 1/4 inch shank. So new grid. I'm going to set this up to be a 1/4 inch grid, and my bit is exactly a 1/4 inch. Boom, boom, and round to that bottom edge. There we go. Always a good idea to zoom out and just get your bearings a little bit. Let's go ahead and place our file. So we're going to be using our right side, again, same design, just mirrored in Illustrator. And you can see I have a lot of these shapes shooting off my original shape. That's really important because we want to be able to cut the pockets bigger than the actual side panel of this cabinet so that we can hollow out that whole space. So in this particular case, and I always do it in an increment that I know. So in this case it's 1/4 inch, or rather 1/2 inch down and 1/4 inch over. You can see that actually brings my true design line exactly to 0, 0, but my anchor point is at -0.25, -0.5. That will, and now you can see why. It allows me to get that pocket all the way to the outside and then some, because I want to clear it out completely. Sure, you can do it with offsets. It's a little trickier because I really want to maintain that top line where my rabbet joint is sitting up against, so I tend to go this route to make it just a little bit bigger. And again, quick zoom out, just to give everything a gander. We have our sliding dovetails here and our rabbet back there. And again, these are some fun decorative shapes that I was thinking about putting in, decided against it. We're going to assemble this, but if I ever wanted to, say, I do my dry fit and I say, you know what, I could use something else, I can always come back to this workstation, or this workspace rather, create that grid, pop it down with some double-sided tape, and cut those. Alright, but for my joinery, I'm going to do that all right now. Start with our 1/4 inch bit. And for anyone wanting to know, I do have ear protection in. These monitor headphones are totally sealed. You will not find me using Origin without ear protection, or any tool for that matter. Alright. Stock 1/4 inch cutter in the tool. What are we going to do? We're going to tell it. It's got a 1/4 inch cutter in there. We're going to Z-touch. Hands off the tool. There we go. And for our depth, well, we're still doing half our material thickness. So I'm going to start with the rabbets, and we're just cutting our material in half. So 0.65 and 0.325. That's good to go. I'm going to do both rabbets. We're going to pocket them, change them to an inside, and cut it to 0, and then test fit. All right. We're good to go. wonderful. Again, onto that test fit. I still have the opportunity to fine tune this fit if for whatever reason it didn't feel exactly as I want it. But I got my bottom surface is exactly in line with that bottom edge. So that is a fantastic rabbit. Very happy with that. All right, on to the next one. This one's kind of funky because it's the back of the cabinet, or there's a very small section of back to the cabinet, and it's kind of a combination of rabbit slash blind dado of sorts, because I'm going to have to use that roundover trick on the back because I'm not going to bring out the chisels today. And I'll show you how. So same thing, pocket first, then move on to our inside cut. All right. Now you probably heard there's always the danger of using Douglas fir because it likes to splinter, especially when you've been used with a router. So that came out beautiful as well. I'm super happy with it. Let's check the dimension. Yep. So while I have you here, this is what I was talking about. I have that radius here left over by my tool. So it's not allowing the crisp edge of my back to get in there. However, let's decide how I want this first. This way. I'm going to route this bottom edge with a trim router. Yeah, just want to show off what we're talking about right there. Just so I don't forget, so you don't forget, mark that edge. And I have my trim router all set up already. All right. Now I'm going with a primarily soft, round look on this whole project, so it works out just fine and dandy. So I'm just doing that bottom edge for now, just so I and you can have the satisfaction of seeing that. Now maybe kind of difficult. I'll get my head out of there. It's a little dark, but that is a nice, secure seat, and just fits beautifully. Sweet. Let's move on to the rest. We have our double-blind dados of sorts. Again, this application, using that 1/8 inch roundover trim bit combined with the 1/4 inch bit in origin, I've used it for things like shelves. So if I just want a floating shelf, that's why I call it the double-blind dado, because you can just plunge, and you don't have a through pass like you would if you're making a dado on a table saw or anything like that. And then using either a chisel or this technique of just using the roundover bit, you get a nice, beautiful, seamless fit. So let's go ahead and do those pockets. Now I'm going to go just a hair deeper on those pockets because I don't want the width of these to stop me from being able to bring everything together. I'm going to leave a little room for glue on these and let the final dimension be dictated by my sliding dovetails and my rabbet joints. All right, pocket first, then inside, then fine tune. Now I always do this when I'm cutting the tenon for anything, or I'm sorry, the mortise for anything. I'm going to stop at 0 just to make sure that they won't fit. I'm just cleaning up any fuzz that was left over by the upcut bit, but we're looking good. Alright, sanity check using the front bottle holder, and we're close. It's not, let me twist this guy over, all the action's happening. It's very close. Again, it's soft wood. I could probably hammer it in there if I wanted to, but as much as I like hammering mallets and everything like that, I'm going to just take off about 4/1000 of an inch all the way around to dial in that fit. Oops. And that is a negative 0.004. Negative because we are cutting into our line now. Anything positive offset wise is going to be on the safe side of our design line. Anything negative is now eating into the actual design, which is good, which is what we want in this scenario. All right. rid of any fuzz. Because I think this is going to be one of those magical fits. All right, front one. There we go. Just enough room for glue. Everyone's happy. Love it. So the same thing is happening on the opposing side. And those things are just going to sandwich together. But I really can't get over that little radius, how happy that makes me when it fits in just so nice. Okay, let's move on to I'm going to cut the details up top, then we're going to move to the dovetail. But I'll cut out that handle real quick, give myself a zoom out. Yeah, and just that front angle. So I'll do those. And we're through cutting, so we're going to go full depth. Do a 0-inch offset. Always start with a positive offset because this is my roughing offset. 0.02 is my go-to.
All right.
I'm going to leave that there for a moment because it's nice and stuck down, so more support under origin is always good. Just to reference our drawing here, that's our top handle detail that we're looking at. And we have cut the rabbet joints, which we will later reinforce with dowels. We have also cut the double blind dado / mortise. And we're going to do the dovetails. So they're two side-by-side sliding dovetails, one of which is the bottom shelf, which actually holds the glasses, hangs the glasses from, and the top shelf is solid. Place to put all your knickknacks. All right. Back in goes the dovetail cutter. Let's do it. This one's always a little tense, especially doing it live, but I'm here for it. Boom. Back in with the 9-degree dovetail cutter. And there we go. Nice solid Z-touch. Again, our bit diameter is still 0.27. Hands off the tool. And oh lordy, let's change that. If it was left at 0.66, I'd be very unhappy. All right, 0.325. Again, we're just trying to half that thickness of our material, and that is the depth at which our dovetails are cut. I'm going to go at it with a 0.02 offset still because I'm going to do this in one shot. Straight forward, straight back. I'll show you what I'm talking about here. There it is. So I'm plunging out here into the air and then traveling straight through. And at no point can I retract until I'm either here, but ideally all the way back to here. So we'll do a rough, we'll do at 0, we'll test fit as always, and then actually I'm going to sneak up it a little bit more. I'm going to do a positive 3 thou to see how that fits first. All right, let's do it. Adjust this. All right, so that was my rough pass. You can see I'm going to come back in and cut it to a -3 thou, trying to do the majority of the material removal with a safety net of my 0.02. All right. Turn on. Knock off any fuzz. And beautiful. Now I'm still in good standing to edit this if I were to need to. I can still take an additional, we're still at 3/1000 of an inch. If I need to loosen it up a little bit, I can, because it is a sliding dovetail, even though I have every intention of gluing it in. It's going to slide into place. Moment of truth. Okay, it certainly wants to go. That is the kind of fit I would like if we weren't doing it live. So we're going to take just a little bit off of it, just to be on the safe side. And again, we're working with pretty delicate wood, so I want to be careful. Do one more pass on these, and then we'll be good to go. Let's say, even honestly, 0.002. Is that enough? No, we'll do one. There we go. That feels better. Still sturdy, but has a nice slide. I'm very happy with that. Woo. All right, pull that back out. But you can see what 1/1000th will really do. Went from needing a mallet to just being like butter. Okay, I'm gonna pry this off. Before we do that, kind of give it a gander. Make sure that we have done all the joints. We're test fit on everything. We're good. Now I can always put it back on, but it's if we're doing joinery and very precise stuff, we want to make sure that we are done with everything. Super important before we pry it off. Sometimes it's a double pry bar type of thing. Hey-oh. Okay. One more thing while I'm down here. You may have noticed when I was doing these large pockets that I was plunging and kind of seeing that visual line of where my material ends. I typically try to do my pocket, my first pass of pocketing, right on that line so that it basically minimizes the risk for tear out. Because if I started here and I had just had a thin little line here, especially in Douglas fir, and then broke through that line, I might run the risk of peeling some grain away. Just something to think about when next time you're making your rabbet joints. Now the moment we've all been waiting for, I'm going to assemble it. Now I'm not going to glue it up right here now, but once I do, the plan is to glue it, let that dry, and then come in and do our dowel reinforcement. It's going to make things a lot easier than trying to do that at the same time. And you know, we've covered, this is kind of the essential joinery for origin, and you'll notice we're not touching on mortise and tenon technically. It's because we've done it a few times before now, but mortise and tenon is just origin is my go-to tool for anything mortise and tenon related. But I may add a little flair, and as you saw in the drawing, little legs just to lift it off of the table surface a little bit. I may do that. Set this aside. All right. Let us begin. A little fine sanding on some of the fuzzy points. Looking good. Looking good. What do you want to do first? Sliding dovetail? Make sure that's good in there. Let's see. Yep. Got the bottom one for the glasses. I have to do this last. You can tell this is the first time that I've put this together. I need to do my blind dados first. They need to come together. And then I can slide everything straight in. This is gonna be fun. Let's do it together. Alright, first one, dreamy. Second one, dreamier. And on to the outside. Beautiful. Just a light tap of the mallet. Now, can you see me all right if I scoot over to this side? Yeah. All right. Now we can slide the saddle shelves in. So we got our colors all matched up. Bada bing. Make sure to go nice and even here. So satisfying. And our glass shelf. A little more snug on this one. That's okay. There it is. All right. 2 parts. Let's go ahead, and this is really the easy part, but our shelf, our backrest fits in there. And our bottom fits in there. That's falling apart. There we go. Voila. There's 3 different types of joinery. One tiny little cabinet. Let's test it out. We actually didn't have any wine, but hummingbird nectar. It's delicious this time of year. Okay. And there we go. Small yet mighty wine rack using rabbets, sliding dovetails, and double blind dados / mortises. Thank you everyone for joining. This has been a pleasure. It's been a very fun journey for me. As always, much appreciated. Join us 2 weeks from now on our next session. Thank you.